this what we all going through collectively, in any part of the world, in any corner of the world, and here in particular, is not independent, of course, or not separate from the cause and effect generated by sum total of all the actions. And this is a proper attitude to see and understand why certain events take place. And if we are to speak about these recent events, which we view from the perspective of what's happening in the political climate, we miss the point. It will take us completely and mislead us. It will take us at best straight to the superficial level of what is happening here and there with all this set of our understandings in relation to what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. The whole culture is infected. The whole culture is infected. And we simply live at the time when that infection runs its course. And as with every illness, there is this catharsis. There is this going to the level where essentially it reaches its peak before the recovery begins. And the symptomatology is there. Everything has certain parabola. Everything, right? And this is the way to understand it. But if we, for a moment, assume that there is political situation, and then there is an astrological situation, and try to align them together, then we will miss the point. We will miss the point here. Astrological situation here is not a situation. It's the culmination of certain karmas. And that's where those astrologers who truly understand this, who truly can run parallels and draw comparisons and give us a proper situation, they almost like they could be the seers of our time. They could point out to these times when the outcome of what has been created finally manifests in this planetary situation. And like every country has a birth, more or less we can speak about that. So just as one can speak about the map or the chart of an individual, one can speak of the chart of the country. Soon as the country declares its sovereignty, soon as it comes up with constitution, soon as it comes up with certain set of laws which, yes, identify this country as an independent country, then it has its birth. And one can then see the trajectory, the strength, the weaknesses, and so forth. This is, of course, spoken from that perspective where we want to understand. But as I said, that we will speak about it throughout the whole entire time together, not just mentioning this and closing this theme. This is really interesting that we happen to be sitting as here in this corner of the world, United States is facing and has been faced with challenging times. But now these challenging times are coming to the surface where no one can actually ignore this. Not a single person can ignore it. It's the unprecedented time. Unprecedented time in the history of this country. Because it comes when, for a long time, some people live in oblivion, in amnesia, thinking that something else is happening. And then suddenly Everyone is being pulled into a certain vortex. But how does it relate and translates to here? Into why we're here and what we're doing? And it translates that up until we create the separations, that I attend the retreat, I maybe even resonate to such degree with the teacher and the teaching that I would consider this to be tools, methodologies. For some, it may go into as far as this is what I see is like really, really the way I can see how I want to walk this path towards total freedom, towards liberation, towards self-realization. But then we go back into our setting and the life sweeps us off our feet with all its demands and completely takes us over. And it takes us over to such degree that we can't even begin to implement what we learned here. We fail. We forget all this. And that we can't afford. Why? Well, because it's another perspective here. Perspective as next to the existential perspective. Because what we want is, of course, in our understanding, what is the best. And that's why politics affect us so intimately. And this is why in my letter addressed to Sangha, I wrote that it is in our political orientations, above all else, the deepest psychological tendencies are. We can recognize them here in the family interactions. Yes, I can see my stuff, I can work on this. Yes, I see this, I see this. But when it comes to our political orientations, we think that we know where we're coming from. Because it's the whole gamut of who we are, how we are educated, and all that what we hold comes to that monolithic block. This is why spirituality very often, the more, I would say, advanced its approach, is being often considered as escapism. And this is what we will talk about. So that all of us have this possibility to view this in a different light. Because there are so many voices. I can see so many Buddhist examples are being now shown, how people are drawn into this, like this, all this, become actively involved in the affairs of the world. This is a gross misunderstanding of how it actually works. A gross misunderstanding. When a spiritual person decides to go in the world of worldly affairs to help, it just shows us that we live in the time of decadence. And we will talk about that, and we will take different approaches so that there is a more clarity to that, and more confidence in what you do in your own corner of the universe. Because when there is a clarity of what you do in your own corner, you understand that you've never been in a corner. Everyone is at the epicenter of the universe at all times. Everyone is the epicenter of the universe. This is the unfathomable paradox, unfathomable. It cannot be understood by the mind. None of us sit in any corner of the universe. Each and every one of us is the center in its own right. And this is why in the times and cultures where this understood, the methodology of working with this surface level of affairs are always worked from the deeper level. This is why in simple terms, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi simply spoke about the role of the gardener. Gardener walks around the garden, examines the state of the leaves, and immediately addresses the roots. Immediately. Something is wilting in the garden. What are the roots? The first sign. Nourishment comes from the roots. The rest is seasonal affairs. If the autumn has come and for that variety of trees and shrubs to shed its leaves, what are we going to do? Lament about that? Lose our sleep? No, we enjoy the parts of the world where all this turns into different colors. Likewise, when all the leaves fall down, we enjoy that as well, because we understand that the life of the tree is not depending on the state of the leaves. Only when there is a misunderstanding, then we start losing peace over this. And that's why the real understanding here, like if you want to be a good citizen, you have to come from the place of real help, utmost help. But if you don't understand that, then this beating about the bush will continue. All this beating about the bush, and there will be this a gray territory. It will continuously pluck you, and you will not know exactly how and what and how am I. This sense of not quite being fully present to what unfolds here, and not quite being fully there out in the world. That's the only understanding needed. A truly revolutionary understanding which revolves the whole thing. But once that understanding takes place, then it's very little where do you apply your action. But this is where we run into tremendous contradictions and conflicts within. And we will be taken out into that outer sphere. And we will support with the top currency. Yes, we will become benefactors of all this. Because we will support by virtue of giving our attention to that which, if we give too much, then something else will be deprived of that attention. Because only that much attention we can give. And whatever we give attention flourishes. Whatever we deprive attention withers. Of course you can. You'll say a lot of things throughout the retreat. Of course you can say it now.
I just want to put out there or ask you how it's like my heart is always hurting. There's so much more suffering on a real level, and that hurts your heart. My heart.
And there is more suffering that you don't know of still. There's more suffering we don't know more of. There is still more suffering. It's not that I want you to put a blind eye on it. And it's too early now to give you this, oh, here it is. I'm going to give you this answer. Sort of to remove you from that. No. But what pains me to see how some of you have been succumbed to this, and you begin to give life force to that what you can't afford. You feed the machine. You feed the full show. Simply by virtue of allowing your consciousness being drawn into the superficial level, into the theater. Nothing is happening there of what you think is happening. Even if I'm not now going to say that all this is oneness, and in oneness how can there be anything that is conflicting? No. Even speaking from the place of diversity, in that diversity, not everything is a genuine coin. Not all this is real silver. A lot of it is fake. And this is where, essentially, is you can't afford to buy a fake silver and be bought by that. Because if you think that you suddenly understand what is happening on this level, and that you suddenly found the right cause and you support that and give all your breath and everything, you might be running in for a big surprise. It's only when someone will come up and show you the true magnitude of what you have never considered, then there will be like almost a revelation of all that I was considered to be is not. And that will be essentially a sober awakening, not even spiritual awakening, simply recognizing that there is a completely different set of affairs. Therefore, you have to be very careful when it comes to politics. Very careful. This is why it takes tremendous, actually, understanding to become apolitical. Don't confuse someone who is bored, who is utterly, essentially done with all this, and became apolitical out of disinterest. Someone who becomes no longer invested into how society can be improved from that level because of their utter disappointment. Disappointment in any solutions. This is not what we're speaking about here. I am speaking about being as political as Sri Aurobindo was. It's the being political from the perspective of where the real policy is being made. And the real policy is being made where self-governing laws of nature are activated. Up until the self-governing laws of nature are dormant, all this is a waste of time. Precious waste of life force, precious waste of opportunity. And fake silver is being circulated and it's our only currency. Fake money is being printed. I'm speaking metaphorically, of course, but it has connotations with the real facts. So it is very often being thrown, and many spiritual seekers, spiritual adepts, spiritual teachers find perplexing where and what do they actually have to do. But if they don't understand this from direct experience and it is not probed by perhaps lineage or tradition, that the real change takes place always at the level where the subtle laws, the self-governing laws are activated, plugged in directly. Then it can come in the ways we cannot even possibly imagine. But if we don't understand this, sooner or later, no matter who am I, a Buddhist nun or a Catholic priest, I will become drawn into these affairs and I will become political. And this is where I will stop being a Buddhist nun and I stop being Catholic priest. If we speak from the genuine perspective of a given professions of what these custodians meant to exemplify and meant to guard.